This is an older Sears gas furnace. You can see it's called a 15 gas furnace. I think it's about 50 years old. Anyway, it's been a great furnace, but now it's making a really loud noise. So when I turn it on, you'll hear what the motor sounds like. It used to run really quietly and smoothly, so I'm going to take it apart and see what's going on. I removed the front panel and these two inspection panels. Each one has a dead man switch at the bottom, meaning that the fan can't turn on while these switches are open like that. This one's been taped over by a previous owner. But what I want to do is I'm going to turn the switch on, let you hear this. That's pretty loud, but if you look in here, you'll see the fan turns. The fan turning is perfectly quiet, so it's not a scraping of the fan because the fan's still turning. It's only when the motor's on you hear that loud noise. Looks like I'm going to have to remove this exhaust stack here and slide that motor cage out of there. I'll unplug the furnace before I do any of this for safety. I've removed the exhaust stack, the front panel, and both of these switches that go here and a sensor there, as well as screws here and there. And I believe now I can slide this squirrel cage assembly out of the furnace so I can get to the motor. I slid the fan unit out and got it to where I can move it sideways so that I can get access to this electrical panel. So I'm going to have to disconnect the electrical wires. Like I say, the furnace is disconnected, and then I can pull the whole unit out and get to it, because to get the motor out, it's not only these mounts, but it's got to be disconnected from the fan too. I've got the fan unit out of the furnace. You can see I've got to disconnect it there. I'll show you what's around the other side. So you can see there's like a nut that's got to be loosened on a collar there that's holding this fan onto the motor shaft. So I've got to loosen that and see if I can get the motor out of this unit. With a little convincing using a hammer and a punch, I was able to drive the motor shaft out of the fan and get the motor out of the assembly. So here it is, and it looks like that mounting cage just bolts to the outside of a pretty generic motor. So I'm going to take that mounting cage off and see if I can find a motor that matches up to the same specs as this one and same size. See if I can replace this one. With the motor cleaned up, you can read on the plate what the specifications are. It looks like it's a 3rd horsepower motor. So I'm going to go see if I can find one that's the right size, right rating, and get this replaced. I found a replacement motor, and it meets all of the specs except for one. This is a 3-speed motor, and the other one was a 4-speed motor. And so it doesn't give you as much flexibility in tailoring the speed to get the flow right through the furnace. But I think I can make this one work. I transferred the mounting bracket to the new motor. Before I install the motor in here, I've got some cleaning up to do on the fan and on the housing. After cleaning this up, I'm ready to install the motor into the fan housing. I mounted the fan onto the motor shaft, and I made sure that it spins freely and doesn't scrape anywhere. The wiring is different on a 3-speed motor than a 4-speed motor. The old motor that was 4-speed, the line, this went straight to the capacitor. This is the line neutral. It went straight to the capacitor, and it had one brown wire that connected to the other end of the capacitor. With this wiring, I have to run the line voltage straight to the white wire for this motor, straight to the line neutral. And then they give me 2 brown wires. So these 2 brown wires connect to the capacitor. And the rest of the wiring is the same. So I'm going to connect it and I'll show you how it connects. This is how I wired up the 3-speed. So neutral goes to the white wire, and the black wire comes to the voltage wire. So this is the power wire coming from the furnace. So I connected the black wire to that. The other wires are all marked red and green are for medium and low. The other one had an extra low, which was orange. This doesn't have that. And the 2 brown wires, you can see I connected here to the capacitor. So they go here and there. One has a white stripe, one doesn't. They go across the capacitor. And it has everything the same one did except for the orange wire for the extra low speeds. So I'm going to see if I can make all this work. Now I'm ready to close up the junction box. You'll notice that this little plastic part, it goes over the wires and then it pushes into the junction box. To get it out, I had to squeeze it with pliers, squeeze it, push it out, and then pull it off the wire. So you don't have to feed the wires through it. It goes around the wires. You see I already fed the wires through the hole in the junction box, and then this is the retainer that goes around the wires and fills the edges of that to keep it from chafing. This is the junction box with the cover ready to go on the front of it. You can see this is where that plastic grommet goes through and protects those wires from the metal box. They come in here. These 2 that you see here, if you're wondering what those are, that's where they splice in these kill switches that mount where the panels are. So all it does is kill power to the motor if those panels are removed. Those wires run out to the switches and run right back in again. So this is everything hooked up. I'll put the panel on the front and then proceed from there. I've temporarily installed it where it goes, and I'm going to just do a test by using this panel switch to turn it on and see if it's wired right and if it runs. Here goes. Wow, that's a lot quieter than it was. Looks like that fan is spinning pretty well without rubbing on anything. Seems to be working pretty well. I think I can go ahead and put all the rest of the sheet metal back together. Okay, I've got it all put back together. You can see the flame is going, and you can hear the fan going, and it's blowing heat, and it's much, much quieter than it was.